All right, let's dive into the ultimate true crime mystery for today's explainer. We are talking about an unsolved homicide. But, this isn't your standard cold case. This murder went down exactly 5,300 years ago, way up high in the freezing Alps. So how exactly do you solve a crime when the trail went cold literally over 5 millennia ago? Well, picture this. It's 1991. Two hikers are trekking through a melting glacier in the Ötzi Alps. Suddenly, they stumble across a body poking out of the ice, just frozen face down. Naturally, they assume it's some unfortunate modern mountaineer. But a few days later, scientists realize they're actually looking at the oldest naturally mummified human ever found. And the biggest shock of all, buried deep in his back is a flint arrowhead.
Yeah, this was definitely no peaceful death in the snow. Advanced CT scans and chemical analysis revealed a completely severed subclavian artery. Researchers even found fibrin in his blood. Now, fibrin is a clotting agent that appears super rapidly at a wound site, but it vanishes really quickly. Because it was still present, it proves he absolutely didn't survive long after the injury. We're talking a rapid bleed out, a violent, sudden death.
Part 1. Who was the Iceman? A complex Copper Age man. Now, what's really fascinating here is how this 45-year-old victim completely dismantles that whole primitive caveman myth. Genetic analysis shows his wardrobe was actually fashioned from 5 different animals, all carefully selected for their unique properties. We're talking a brown bear hat, supple goatskin leggings, a seriously warm sheepskin coat, hardy cattle leather shoes, and a deer hide quiver. So this highly sophisticated blended wardrobe, it proves Ötzi wasn't just some isolated mountain hermit. He was likely a traitor, heavily connected to a complex society. To put his life into exact context, scientists turned to radiocarbon dating. By measuring the predictable decay of the carbon-14 isotope in his tissues, they proved without a doubt that he died around 3250 BCE. That places him smack in the middle of the Copper Age, which was a time of early metal tools and rising agricultural communities. Part 2. Tracking the final hours. A desperate escape. Okay, this is where it gets crazy. Scientists practically used nature as a GPS to track his frantic escape. About 48 hours before his death, Ötzi suffered a really deep defensive wound to his right hand. This points to a violent close-quarters knife fight. He survived it, sure, but he had to run. And we know exactly where he went because his stomach actually contained hop hornbeam pollen, which is from a tree that only grows down in the lower valleys. Then, traces of high-altitude mosses found on him reveal this desperate, exhausting climb up into a rocky, high alpine gorge. And that is where, at hour 0, the fatal arrow struck. But, he didn't run on an empty stomach. His absolute last meal was a massive chunk of greasy wild ibex fat. That actually made up 46% of his stomach contents, alongside einkorn weights and red deer meat. Now, in a freezing, high-altitude environment, packing your gut with animal fat is a brilliant survival tactic. But it comes with a pretty ironic twist. Modern scans showed this incredibly fatty diet gave our rugged survivalist terrible cardiovascular plaque. He was actually at a really high risk for a major heart attack long before that arrow ever found him. So to put all these clues together, researchers called in Munich homicide detective Alexander Horn, and here's his step-by-step murder theory. After that initial, brutal fight where Ötzi got the defensive hand wound, the killer tracked him up the mountain. But instead of engaging face-to-face, the killer took a long-distance sniper shot from about 30 meters away. Why do that? Well, Ötzi was evidently just too dangerous to fight up close again, so the killer waited for the absolute perfect moment to strike from behind, leaving Ötzi to just bleed out right there in the ice. Part 3. Ancient medical secrets revealed. Copper Age healthcare. 61. That is the exact number of charcoal tattoos found perfectly preserved on the Iceman's skin. But here's the wild part. They weren't decorative art at all. Multispectral imaging revealed that these crosses and lines perfectly align with classic acupuncture points. They specifically targeted areas where his joints showed severe arthritis and his chest where he suffered from gut disorders. It's amazing because his surprisingly sophisticated treatments perfectly match his shockingly relatable ailments. He carried birch polypore fungus, which is actually a known natural antibiotic. Plus, his gut contained traces of bog moss. Bog moss is highly absorbent and antiseptic, so it was likely used to staunch the bleeding on his badly sliced hand. But his modern-sounding medical chart doesn't end there. The guy had the earliest known case of Lyme disease. He had an ulcer-causing bacteria called H. pylori, and he was treating these very modern ailments with a level of care that predates Asian acupuncture records by a full 2,000 years. Just incredible.
Part 4. Why the Iceman Matters. A timeless cold case.
So what does this all mean? Why should we even care about a cold case from 3250 BCE? Because, as Chief Inspector Horn points out, we still see these exact behavioral patterns in homicide cases today. You have the escalation from an initial conflict, to stalking, to a cowardly shot in the back. Sure, their tools were made of copper and flint, and ours are digital and steel. But human behavior, human violence, and our rawest motives, they really haven't changed a bit in 5,000 years. Part 5. What the ice still hides. Glacial archaeology. Ötzi basically launched an entire field known as glacial archaeology. But we're dealing with a serious ticking clock here. As global temperatures rise and glaciers melt at an unprecedented rate, the ice threatens to destroy thousands of other ancient secrets before we can ever find them. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Think about everything we just learned from a few leather scraps, some moss, and stomach contents. If you were frozen today as the glaciers melt 5,000 years from now, what would your final meal and your wardrobe say about you? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.